again, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us today. I'm Holly Gibson.
And I'm Jordan Davis.
And today we're excited to have you join us as we go through the first of our brand new webinar series on helping your company navigate rapid growth. This is a series that we're really excited to present to you guys. I know that many of you attended our series last month, really focusing on profitability. So we've been very excited to put together this new series focusing on how to help your company grow and really how to help your company navigate that growth once you get there.
Yeah, I've recognized some similar names or some familiar names from our last webinar series. I was really excited to share some of the ways that you could plan for and build profitability into not only your estimates, but able to plan that profitability through actually seeing the initial schedule of your projects and moving into making sure that that was a repeatable process. And today, really excited to move past the planning stage into maintaining that profitability. And so today we're really going to dive into the tools that UDA Technologies has brought to you to let you maintain that profitability. So Holly, thanks so much for joining today and really taking charge and helping our clients maintain that profitability and really maintaining that rapid growth without falling to pieces on the way.
Yeah, definitely. Well, as I said, I'm super excited for this session today. So one of the things that I love most about my time at UDA is getting to talk to so many of you on the phone and really look at how you're doing in your day-to-day business, how you're using our tools, learning about the markets that you're in. And it gives us, you've probably heard us say this before, but at UDA we have, we serve over 550,000 customers all over the world. And so I think that one of the things that really has given me is an appreciation for the perspective of kind of what it's like out there for you guys. And we're able to see trends in different markets and things like that. And I think that what I'm really hearing from clients that I've worked with is that, one, you guys are experiencing growth. There seem to be a lot of really healthy markets out there, a lot of building going on, and a lot of you that are just seeing your companies really, really grow over the last couple of years and are preparing for even more of that growth. The other thing, though, that I think we're seeing here is that there are, with that growth comes some pretty common questions, or as we've said here, maybe some of the common pitfalls that you don't want to fall into. And we'll explore some of those in the rest of this series. So usually with growth, you have the need to bring on new team members and really how to help them execute at a high level. So we'll have a session on that. And there's also kind of the challenge that comes with growth of, not being able to be in 10 places at once. And how can you maintain visibility over that many job sites as your company is growing? But Jordan, like you were saying, really for today's session, we're going to focus on that third question that I feel like we get, which is, how can I maintain profitability as my company is growing? Or, do more jobs always have to equal less profit? Because I think that's a pretty common challenge that builders will face when they begin to grow, is that you're getting more jobs, but maybe a little bit less profit, off of each of those jobs. And we're going to just look today at some of the tools that you'll have available to you in ConstructionSuite and ConstructionOnline to really monitor that profitability on a regular basis, to monitor where you're standing financially as a company, and then drill down and look at how we're doing across the different jobs. And then we're also going to kind of look at just some tips and tricks, strategies, best practices for how you can what you can do with this information. What are you going to do with it once you start to look at it? So I'm excited to dive in. Now, as I mentioned, of course, you guys have a question panel there in GoToWebinar. So before we really start going through some of the tools, just a reminder that we love to hear from you guys during the webinar, so don't be shy to chat in questions. We'll do our very best to get to all of them as we go along, or follow up with any of you guys on questions that maybe we don't get to during the live session today. All right, so I think we'll jump right in. And what I really want to show you guys as we're getting started here is to start with some of the high level information. So I hope that either that you attended our profitability series last time, or we'll go back and watch those recordings. Great series. One of the things that we know here at UDA is that every job, and especially every profitable and successful one, is going to need to start with an accurate estimate. So we've got a lot of great resources on how to help you improve that and put together those estimates. Where we want to start for today's session is, okay, so now you're putting together the estimate in ConstructionSuite. You're putting all of your jobs into ConstructionSuite. So we're really pulling together a lot of information. So we're going to step through a few of the places where you can view that information, get some insight, and really what each of these things do. Starting with our very first screen here. So when we log in, we're going to look at this Today screen. And the thing I want to highlight for you guys here is your financial graph. So we're looking at a really quick read. I know a lot of times a challenge is, having enough time or just needing to be able to see some information really quickly. Jordan, I feel like you hear that a lot.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I end up fielding a lot of calls from current clients. I work also with potential new members of the UDA family or the UDA team to really identify where we can come in and help. And what I find often is that when companies hit a growth spurt, or they start into a sustained growth period, there comes challenges with managing and interpreting all of the information that comes pouring in and really moving out as a result. And as a way of managing some of this information, we've developed a lot of business intelligence dashboards for you based on continued years of feedback and continual improvement. And this dashboard, this company dashboard, is a direct result of client feedback.
That's right. And you can see that it does show you, a good bit of information here. We can see a cost breakdown across all of our projects. We can see, kind of big picture, how many outstanding change orders we might have. This financial graph I really love because it's a super quick read for each project. So you'll notice that each project has a section, and we can see where did we start. So what was the base estimate for this job? What's our current estimated value, which is going to include not only the base estimate, but any change orders added on top. And then any of those actuals that you're pulling in. So your actual cost, current committed cost, invoiced amounts. So we're getting a really quick read there. Now, what we may want to do is drill in and look at that information in just a little bit more detail. And so that's where we'll head over to the company overview. This is something that's available for you guys in corporate or developer levels and above. But you have this company overview that's really intended to give you a big picture, what I like to think of as a roll-up view of your company's project data. You can look at some schedule information here, of course, but it's super useful for looking at your financial data, because what happens is when you put that project into ConstructionSuite, you're going to assign it a type and you're going to assign it a group. And what that's going to allow us to do is then, as you're looking at some of these dashboards, drill in a little bit further and start to look at those projects not only as a whole, but on a per group or per type basis. What you see with the company overview is we start with, first of all, UDA, so our company as a whole. So I can see all my projects rolled up just to kind of that top level. Where do I stand in terms of base versus estimated value? Am I over? How are we doing there? So you would want to check this on a regular basis and want to make sure you're keeping that information updated, but this is giving you that real high level view. Then what we're going to do is the next section allows us to see different groups of projects. Now, this really could be however you want to define it. In my example, Jordan, what I've chosen to do is do it like as a subdivision, for example. So I have some of my projects that are ungrouped and some that I've put into my Baldwin Park group, which is maybe a development that I'm working on. So this is going to allow me to see, again, rolled up into those groups. Well, how much money have I estimated for there? What's our current estimated value? How much have we spent? Where do we stand? And then from there, of course, we can just keep expanding out and see the details for each individual project so that you can have those nested groups, that roll-up view of your company, and then you can also drill right in and see on a job-by-job basis very, very quickly, what your numbers are.
Yeah, what's really great about this dashboard view, at least from what I've heard, is that this information is already being put into the system. You don't have to go and spend time pulling a report or really thinking about how would I chunk this information, how would I put this together. You've already done that decision making beforehand, and the ConstructionSuite system is pulling it all together for you. It really can save a lot of time and honestly mental processing power to try and think about, well, how can I see where I am on the Baldwin Park subdivision, or maybe we can take a look and see, well, maybe we do need to start grouping our projects a bit better. So you have some options here to help you make better decisions in progress.
Yeah, that's right. And it takes like no additional time. You just have to know where to go in the system to look for it, because like you said, you're already collecting this data. You've got it in the system. So, it's just a really quick way to do that without having to go to individual jobs and open them up or go open individual estimates. There'll be a time for that, and we'll talk about that too in a moment, because we do recommend that you do that on a regular basis. But for getting that big picture view and that executive summary, this is really the place to go. The other tool that's going to be available for you in this section that I really, really love is our work in progress tool. So it's the same idea where we're really pulling information from your estimates, from your schedule, actuals that you're importing back in. Usually you're pulling those back in from QuickBooks, so we're able to see all of those numbers right here. But now, in addition to just displaying, of course, that data for you, what it's going to also do is calculate numbers for you, like your original estimated gross profit, what your final gross profit was on these jobs, and help you see things like where you're slipping, what percentage you're slipping away. A certain amount of that slip is expected. If that number is too high, then that's a red flag that you need to be doing something better. And we want to make sure that you are, of course, not only having the tools to stay organized and put together estimates, but hopefully make better decisions or feel really good about that in the future. So this is one of those tools that can really, really help you do that.
Yeah, and something that is really useful about the work in progress dashboard, of course, it lets you see all of your projects in the system. It's pulling all this information in for you, but sometimes that information, especially for the larger projects, can kind of wash out some of the other projects that you're taking on. It's really common, at least in my experience, Holly, to work with clients who are taking on multiple different kinds of jobs to fill their work pipelines and really to continue maintaining their cash flows. But as a result, some of the larger valued projects end up kind of hiding some of the details that might otherwise really be important to see. But we've thought ahead, we've planned for that, and there are all sorts of ways to filter this work in progress dashboard down to really give you useful information for each subset of your projects. So that really lets you maintain not only some of the smaller work that you might have coming in, that's pretty consistent, but also lets you keep track and see those without your larger projects kind of hiding them in the details, so to speak.
Yeah, definitely so. And I think that's super important when we think about how that applies to a growing company. One really common thing that I think happens, and again, I feel like we have the best clients in the world. You guys are doing great things out there, but what starts to happen is that you really build a reputation. You've got a reputation for quality, a reputation for doing great work. You're in a market that's really expanding, so you start getting opportunities not just in your current wheelhouse, but really things outside of that. Maybe you did a wonderful job on a high-end renovation for someone, and now they say, well, I have an office space that I'd love for you to do for me. And it's not too far off, right? How different could that be? But maybe then you start to get a reputation there, or sometimes it's vice versa. And so we see companies, really start to grow in all sorts of different directions, which is an awesome thing. But we feel like we want to empower you guys with the numbers that you need to understand if certain types of jobs are more profitable for you, if some are less profitable to the point that maybe you're turning down jobs that you should be taking in lieu of just the ones that happen to be coming in. And so we want to give you, the tools in your hands to make decisions there. So when you look at how we can filter this down, it would be by the groups that we just looked at, by different types of jobs. Maybe I look at my residential versus commercial, or new construction versus renovation, or maybe we look at different jobs in different stages to see what that looks like for us. And then you also have additional tools that allow you to filter down by jobs that have maybe we put a cap on the dollar value there, or jobs that have been in progress for no longer than a certain period of time. So like you were saying, Jordan, it doesn't wash those out, as well as different levels of completion. So you can really drill in and get some great information here. One thing before we jump too far away from the work in progress that I really love that this tool does is that it also takes snapshots. So we can set this up to take snapshots for us on a weekly basis or a monthly basis, so that you can not only have up-to-date information here, but you can always go back and compare it to previous points in time to get a better read on the direction that your company is growing in, and if that's something that you are happy with, or something you feel like you want to adjust based on looking at these numbers. So the next thing we would do, and I see some great questions coming in, so we'll pause a couple of times throughout the session today to look at some of those and try to address those as we're going through. My colleague Sydney is on the line to answer your questions via chat, so definitely keep those coming. Jordan, I know the next thing that we wanted to jump into, so when we look at tools available to really help our customers keep an eye on their profitability and eye on their numbers, the dashboards and things that we're looking at here are really going to give you that high level, and those are things that we've defined here at UDA. If for some reason you are wanting to view your data in a way that we haven't thought of yet, there's another really awesome little tip or trick that I want to share with everyone. It's a very cool thing that we do in the system, and something that can really help you break your data down into ways that matter to you. So if we wanted to view our projects list, one thing to keep in mind, of course, is that you can turn on and off pretty much any column that you want to. So if we want to see our financial data showing up right here in the project list, you can do that. And so I've gone ahead and done that for my project list here. So of course we've got a nice list, a lot of data, but if we want to break this down a little bit further, the trick for you guys is if you go to the top of your screen here and you just choose view, you've got the option to go ahead and choose group by. And what this allows us to do is create as many nested groups as we want, and kind of look at, again, that data rolled up, but instead of based on how we at UDA have defined it, you get to base that however you want. So if we wanted to maybe say drill down by type, we'd be able to just drag that type column to the top, and now I've got a quick breakdown here. As I expand these out, I'm going to turn my subtotal row on so that it's going to give me the totals here so I can see a quick breakdown. But maybe type isn't what we want to see. Maybe we have certain clients that we do repeat work for, so we could actually go ahead and do client first. And then maybe we look at type from there. So you can do multiple groups. In fact, you can keep building this out as many layers as you need to, and keep subtotaling so that we're really able to see a drilled in view of that financial data. So that's one of my favorite tricks to show people, especially clients that have been using the system for a little while, because it really is a great way for you to be able to just do more with the data that you've already got in the system.
Yeah, I can't emphasize enough how much I love this one piece of ConstructionSuite. I feel like hardly any client I've spoken with knows about it before I bring it up. I always get positive feedback when I do bring it up, because you can instantly see, I think for your own business, I'm thinking, for instance, companies that might operate in two different locations. Mm-hmm. Where should they spend more of their efforts trying to win more clients? Is there a certain zip area where you can find more profitability? Maybe you should increase your sales and marketing opportunity or marketing efforts mm-hmm. in that location, and really kind of scale back in the areas where you've had a higher budget, but for whatever reason over the past few months it's just kind of dropped off mm-hmm. for whatever reason. I think there's so many different ways to maintain your profitability in process with the information you already have without having to throw everything at the wall and see what sticks, especially if you are continuing to work in the system and paying attention to these things.
Well, that's right. And you get the payoff of consistent usage of the system. You know, when you're using something like this day to day to put together your estimates and manage your projects, this is a type of information that you can now start to pull out as a payoff, because you could use it as a marketing tool to determine maybe in what areas or what types of clients you want to market to a little bit more. You can also use it as a great tool to kind of get a better understanding. Maybe you have a column for project manager and you could group by that one, so you could see if certain project managers within your company, kind of how they were doing on estimate versus actual, or resources that you've assigned or clients that you might work with, so you can really get that insight however you'd like to see it. And again, just a few extra clicks. This isn't a time-consuming thing. You take 5 minutes, click around a little bit, and suddenly you're starting to get a lot more insight on your business. Now, that is all, of course, the big picture company stuff, which I really love, because I think that you have to keep that eye on the health of your company. One of my favorite sayings is, if you mind your pennies, the dollars will take care of themselves, though. And I think that for me, when I look at this tool, of course, we want to look at that big picture data, but there's really not a substitute for effectively managing each job individually. So the next thing that we'll do is spend kind of the back half of this webinar looking at some of those specific tools here for you on an individual job-by-job basis that are really going to allow you to control the financials and control the profit on individual jobs. I'll go ahead and drill into one of my projects here. And of course, as every job is going to start with a great and accurate estimate, we'll bring our estimate up. That's where we'll be able to access some of these reports. Jordan, maybe talk a little bit about the kinds of questions that we hear about this, or what are you hearing from your clients?
Well, once they've planned for success and really built profitability into their estimates, the next step is maintaining that profitability. A lot of times the questions will come in about how to view the estimate to really find the information that they're looking for. We have a few default views built into the estimating platform. Holly, it looks like right now you have the view set to where we're actually kind of taking a look at some of the financial aspects. I also see here that we're looking at our actuals pulled in from QuickBooks, and that's maybe a topic for another time. We have plenty of resources on our financial integrations, but really the questions that I run into, or the questions that I tend to field, are, okay, well, we got the estimate, we got the job running. Now, how do we see that information? Where do we find it? And how do we know what to look for in some cases? So,
yeah, that's exactly right. I feel like those are the same types of questions that I get, and kind of best practice questions too. I'll often work with a client who will ask, well, what do you see other companies doing? And I think the companies that I see managing this most successfully have some best practices in place. One, they communicate well with each other, so everyone knows what's going on. So whether you're one person managing the estimate and managing some of the accounting, or whether you have a full staff in your office, it's important that everyone kind of knows what the expectations are, knows what's going on when you look at your actuals, because of course once we start, after we've built the estimate and we really want to keep track of how we're doing on this job, we need to enter the actuals. So of course, if you're integrating with QuickBooks, you're going to be able to pull those right in from QuickBooks. Just a couple of clicks, you've got all the information here that you need. You can also enter those actuals manually if you'd like, so that you're not dependent on using the QuickBooks if that's not something that you want to do. But it's definitely a nice shortcut. Jordan, like you said, there's a lot of resources there. Either way, whatever method that you're using, we recommend that you're going to update your actuals in ConstructionSuite anytime you pay bills. It's important that whatever that looks like for you, whether that's once a week, every other week, however often you're doing that, you want to make sure that that you're updating your actuals at that time. Just make it a part of your routine. I promise the payoff is worth it because you have now so much information. You can run some great reports. Like Jordan mentioned, we do have some default views. So if you want to get to the view that I'm seeing in my estimate, there is some little options here in your bottom right corner. This third one over is my financial view. So I click that, it's going to automatically give me these columns so I can see really quickly my actual, what my variance is on the job. But maybe we want to drill in a little bit further and pull some specific reports. The easiest thing, one super easy thing that you can do is update your actuals every time you pay bills, and then every time you do that, run an estimate versus actuals report. That's going to be located under your reports tab here, and then you have your financial reporting section. The estimate versus actuals is a great one. Notice that you've got some additional reports that you can pull for things like your committed cost versus actuals, or your estimated amount versus how much you've invoiced. So you can definitely do some awesome additional reports here. But when you want to run any of those, the process is going to be the same. You'll just kind of click to bring up that report, and then what's going to happen is we'll get to make some choices about what we want to include, and then we're going to have a report produced for us. Now I've got one for us to look at here. I've chosen to kind of not include items that I haven't entered actuals for, just so we'd have something a little more concise. But I can see here what was my total cost, what's my actual, what is my variance on each of these. So you're able to see that very, very easily. But you can run this, of course, for your entire estimate and just review it with your team or your project manager on a weekly basis to make sure you're really keeping an eye on those numbers.
Yeah, I mean, we can see clearly from here without having to find this type of information in the estimate. You definitely can, but the report is going to save a lot of time. And instantly, I'm wondering, what happened here?
What? Yes.
Yeah. How did we
Right.
not take into account that this was going to go so over budget? I think this really gives you not only the tools to analyze what's happening on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis with your projects, so that you're not, ending up 3 months down the road and finding out that you went over budget by $17,000 on even just one small section of your project. But it gives you the ability to find out what you can do now to honestly rescue the profitability of this project. It also gives you potentially the ability to think ahead for similar projects. We're working in a subdivision here. Maybe we should realize that before electrical labor comes up in these next projects, we need to have a discussion with our team to make sure this doesn't happen again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Or it may allow you to spot patterns where you're consistently over budget in certain areas. So there's a lot of value in just running that report on a regular basis and reviewing it with your team. I've also pulled, you'll notice, an over budget report. There's actually just a wealth of information under the reporting tab as a whole. There's so much that you can now do with this information that we have it in the estimate. But this financial reporting tab for keeping track of our profitability is going to really help us see exactly that. We're going to see where we stand. The over budget report is going to pull only those areas where we're over budget. So if we just want a quick read on, am I over on anything, or maybe kind of as you're doing a closeout at the end of the job, you want to go back through and pull that so you know exactly now where you need to make improvements in the future, you can go ahead and pull that. It's going to show you all of the areas where you are over budget so that you can look at those. Of course, there are profitability reports, remaining balance reports, which are going to show you exactly what that, of course, remaining balance is. So you've got a lot really that you can do from a reporting standpoint.
Well, I think in terms of finding out what's happening on the jobs, there's definitely wealth of information. The challenge isn't, from what I found working with clients, the challenge isn't having the information on hand, it's making it useful, making it usable. Mm-hmm. And I think that just spending a few minutes to really just get familiar with where you can find this information is going to answer that question for you. We've put a lot of work into taking the work that you're doing and making it understandable, making it readable without looking at just walls and walls of numbers. We're really committed to pulling information that's useful to you and your team. So I think there is one element or one challenge that our clients all deal with across the world and across industry segments, and we were saving it for last. Holly, it's sometimes the elephant in the room, or I think one day it was described to me as a meteor crashing through the ceiling. So without further ado, Holly, I know that this was something you wanted to save until the end. Would you want to go ahead and bring it up?
I feel like you're introducing a celebrity or something, Jordan.
Well, it's a really powerful tool, and it's something that, quite frankly, I've been talking with clients about more and more over the past few weeks. Not that it's everyone's favorite subject, but it is something that we can really help with, I feel. It
is. Well, when we dive into kind of looking at how to maintain profitability during those periods of growth, part of it is having the data, the information, knowing what to do with it, having those executive dashboards. Part of it is regular debriefing on that project, run your report, look at the report, review that with your team. The last part of it is really being able to manage change orders effectively. I don't know that it's anyone's favorite subject, but I think also it's not quite as dreaded as you might think. I mean, in my experience, everybody has to deal with it, and change orders can even be an opportunity to make money and increase client satisfaction. I mean, it kind of depends on the client and the type of job and how you handle them. But from a financial standpoint, we want to make sure that we are handling it. It's kind of whatever type of experience you've got going with the change orders. It's on all but the smallest jobs, they tend to be, one, inevitable. So we know that we're going to run into that. And two, it's just properly handling and documenting the change orders is one of the easiest ways that you can make sure that that the job is remaining profitable. I actually, my colleague Amanda, who I don't know if she's listening today or not, but one time worked with a client who had discovered at the end of the year almost $300,000 in unbilled change orders. And from what I understand of that story, it was a catastrophe for the company or the project manager that was responsible for that. Of course, that's a big deal, and it was just not because there was no visibility and documentation there. And of course, every story isn't that dramatic, but we do want to look at ways to be able to manage that well. Now, the good news, of course, is that if you're using ConstructionSuite or ConstructionOnline, which I'm going to take a look at in just a moment for you guys so you can get a feel for, what's available in our online platform in terms of keeping your eye on that profitability as well. But no matter which platform that you're using, you have outstanding tools to be able to create and manage change orders right within the estimate. So, the creating of the change order is easy. I'm not going to spend a ton of time there, but know that if we want to add a change order, it's just as easy as, selecting that we want to add a change order. It was actually telling me that, hey, Holly, you need to tell me where we're going to add this change order. So if we're going to do it here on exterior windows and doors, we'll just click there, hit add change order. And then really we do the rest for you. It kind of walks you through making some choices about what's going to be included in the change order. I'm going to create a new one. It goes ahead and numbers it for me. I can give it a different name if I want. Right now it's pending. The client has not approved it. And I think that's part of this process too, is to make sure that, hey, especially if it's a big change, you want to estimate that out, go ahead and create a change order. Make sure that you're getting the client sign off on it. So I've gone ahead and just chosen to create a new subcategory and create my change order here. You'll notice that it's shaded a little bit differently so I can see it very quickly on my estimate here. And then now all I have to do is start adding items and estimating out what this change order is going to be. Pretty easy. I'm not going to step through every single piece of this. It's super easy to do if you've put together your estimate. Then putting together the change order is going to be pretty much exactly the same. You're going to type in your numbers. The one thing that's different to note is that with change orders, you're going to want to make sure that you're applying a separate line item markup or rolling that into the cost of the change order. It's different than your company overhead and margin, which is going to apply to your entire job, entire base estimate, but that's not applying to change orders. In fact, best practice is often that your change orders are going to have to be marked up by a little bit more than what you're initially planning for. So don't forget to include that when you're estimating out those change orders, that you want to make sure that you're covering your profit and your margins there too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's a common question. I've spoken with clients before who have looked for a way to include change orders or have the change orders factor into their company overhead and margin sections, because to them that is the way that they can guarantee that their overhead costs are covered and that they're hitting their target profit margins. But because the change order is actually changing the scope and scale of the project, it's by necessity outside of that original contract amount, which means that really there's a different way of handling programming in profitability on top of this, because as of right now we're really just looking at our base costs to do this extra work. Really we want to make sure to hopefully maintain some semblance of profitability on this extra work. Hopefully it doesn't knock our schedule off too much. We really want to program in kind of a cushion to handle that change as well.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We do have a great question coming in from Scott, who's asking, if you have a large change order that's going to require multiple pieces. So that's a pretty common question, is that, look, most change orders, especially if they are a little bit larger, are not going to be one individual subcategory. So, in the end, how you structure the estimate's always going to be, however you want to, however makes sense for your company. However, we make it really easy for you to create that awesome structure for your estimate. But now when you're doing a change order, let's see, we're going to select this, and you do actually have the ability to go in. So we're going to create a new one. And I'll step through this, so it's going to be pending. And then when we come here to this screen, this is where we're going to be able to say, okay, so part of this change order is going to be in this exterior windows and doors category, overhead door and installation. Maybe the next part of it is going to be also here, but in a different, a different subcategory, maybe miscellaneous. And maybe there's also going to be some framing work involved. So now I can add that, which allows me to really now build a pretty detailed change order that, can use different pieces from all across the estimate. You're going to be able to kind of build in all the detail that you want here. So, Scott and anybody else who's curious, it definitely does a really, really nice job of handling that. So it's great for making simple change orders where, it's just one or two items and you can do a pretty quick change. And I think that's important to note, because sometimes you're tempted to not document change orders when they're small and simple. So you want to make sure it's easy to do, but then also for those larger ones, you can really estimate that out, pull in all these different pieces, and and have a change order where you're accurately costing that from an estimate standpoint.
Yeah, and once you do have a change order that's built out that maybe is cross category, or to actually borrow a phrase from earlier today, cross divisions, we make it really easy to not only identify the change orders that you have now, but it's easy to see the pieces that make up those change orders. Each one of these change orders on the summary, at least in the ConstructionSuite estimate, acts kind of like a hyperlink. So if we actually clicked on, say, change order 4, we would actually jump to the first piece in the change order. If there were multiple sections, for instance, this is pulling in some electrical fixtures work, and then back to overhead doors and installation. So it looks like that's what we have so far, but it really helps you drill down and find these pieces without having to search through the estimate. So if you wanted to maintain your division structure, wanted to keep your original estimated amounts and your adjusted amounts through change orders together, just so you can quickly compare, it allows you to do that without having to search constantly and spend precious minutes trying to find that information that you really need right then.
Exactly. You can just click through. Every time I click, it takes me to the next thing. Of course, we can also view the change orders by using this option here at the top to be able to view them. From this menu, we can also upload the change order to ConstructionOnline. So if you want to do like a digital client approval, have your client go in through a portal, you would be able to upload that to ConstructionOnline from here, make that available for your team to see, or make that available for your client to go ahead and give their approval. And then back to our reporting tab, you're also able to do, of course, really nice print-ups for the change orders, where you can generate those change order documents, have your client sign off on that, make sure that it's all documented well, or present that as a proposal. So you've got a lot of great presentation tools for your change orders as well, because of course the end goal is that that those are approved and signed off on, or you're able to have that conversation. So it does a nice job of helping you do that. Excellent.
Actually, I see another question that I wanted to chime in on, just to answer. The question that came in, they were asking how to run a report that really breaks down cash flow month to month. I would really encourage that you watch our scheduling profitability webinar from last month, because we actually cover exactly that. I would highly encourage everybody that is attending today to watch that as well. I think we're starting to come to the close of our webinar now, so I don't want to overcommit everyone to that, but you really should spend a few minutes to look at that, and you'll see just that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So a great question from Rachel, and thanks so much for joining today and bringing that question up, because it's definitely a great one. One unique thing about working with ConstructionSuite is that when you put your estimate together, you're able to then, again, with a few clicks here, create a schedule from that estimate. Now, what's going to happen there is this financial data, of course, is going over to your schedule, and you're able to run that cash flow report right from the schedule, and it does a beautiful breakdown of what that looks like for you. I'll reach out after today's session and send that over to you, because it is a great one, but I encourage anyone who's curious about that, go back and watch those profitability webinars as well. It's a great series. The other thing, real quick, before we wrap up today, because we are running out of time, but I do want to make sure to also just take a quick peek into ConstructionOnline as well. So as we're covering our best practices today for managing that profitability through growth, the tools that we've focused on have been within our ConstructionSuite platform. An amazing tool for running your company and your projects. It does such a beautiful job. But we have another tool, ConstructionOnline, which also is an amazing tool and does a beautiful job. It's a little bit of a different setup. It's web-based, but do want to bring that up for you guys and just show you some of the options that are going to be available for you in ConstructionOnline for keeping your eye on some of this same type of information. So as I bring ConstructionOnline over, we'll take a look. Now, like I mentioned with the change orders, it's really easy. Online, so you can either publish those up from ConstructionSuite or create them in the field and get a customer to sign off on it right there, in the mobile app. Create the change order in the app, they can go ahead and digitally sign, and you've got that documentation already done. So it does a great job of allowing you to create those change orders, manage those change orders. You can see a summary anytime of where we're starting on the job, how many change orders have been accepted. Your client can see this, of course, if you want them to. So it's a great way to manage that. And then, of course, on the estimating front, you have tools that are going to allow you to see things like, again, where are you over budget, or where are you, where are we standing from like an invoice standpoint? How much have we billed the client for? And this option with ConstructionOnline is also going to integrate with your QuickBooks. So if you are, kind of using QuickBooks, or you're curious about what that would look like, there are ways that you can, of course, track that here. So you have a wealth of tools here. And again, like I said, many of my clients are using both of these. It's so easy to just publish that information from ConstructionSuite right to ConstructionOnline. And then, any of your project managers or yourself, if you're out and about, can log in and be able to see, okay, great. So here's where I stand. I can see that I've used up 18% of my budget for Division 1 here, or be able to see again those outstanding change orders. And you have all of those financial reports here where we can pull estimate versus actual or estimate versus committed cost and still see that information. So even though our focus today has been primarily looking at those desktop tools, know that similar tools are available for you in ConstructionOnline, and both platforms do a good job of really helping you to follow those best practices and make sure that you're maintaining your profitability.
Yeah, I found myself in numerous conversations this week, and numerous calls this week, where the goal really was, how can we get our current updated budget out to our guys in the field to make sure that they're not overspending on materials because, well, they found out they were a little short, and they want to make sure they can cover it. Well, do they have the budget for that? Well, in a lot of cases, that might be a phone call, and then someone's frantically scrambling through a worst case scenario, like a project binder stuffed full of receipts to try and find out where they are. A little better case scenario, maybe they're going to pull it up and drill down into ConstructionSuite. Best case scenario, skip that step, become much more efficient. Just pull up the summary view of the estimate or the budget at this point from the mobile app that we have for ConstructionOnline. Every single time that I've mentioned that, I feel like I was kind of stuck in Groundhog Day. I was saying the same thing like 4 times in a row, that it is entirely possible to pull your actual costs to date into ConstructionOnline and then to actually look at that right from the mobile app, and then make decisions right on the spot. Maybe there's a conversation that needs to happen with the client. When the iron is hot, it's time to strike. And what I've heard was that being able to just put together an accurate change order on the fly and then have a client sign off on it has been invaluable for our clients.
Yeah, definitely so. I mean, you have to do those things while you're thinking about it, while you're going to remember it, especially if it's something small that you can do. I mean, I think that's how you make sure that the small ones are treated just as importantly as, as some of those larger change orders as well. So let's see, we are running up on about 5 minutes till the top of the hour. Again, I want to thank all of you guys for really investing some time to be with Jordan and I this afternoon and look at some of those tools that are available to you. Before we close for the day, I want to just pause for a moment and give everyone a chance to chat in any questions that you have about what we've covered today, or any questions that you might have about anything else. We'll pause just for a moment to let you chat over those questions and be right back with you to wrap up. All right, so we've had a few great questions come in. As time allows, we'll go through a couple of those. The one that I see that I want to just address again real quick before we wrap up and kind of drop off here. I've had a couple of additional people ask questions about the cash flow report. So I'll show you guys real quick where to find it, and then like I mentioned, I'll make sure to kind of reach out with that information just as a follow-up to this webinar, so you can watch in a little more detail on how that's done, but it's super easy to do. While I'm pulling this up, I just want to take a moment to thank everyone again for joining, and to also remind you guys about the lineup for our next 2 sessions. We'll be doing this every Thursday for the rest of August. Our next session is really going to focus on visibility. So how can you, as a business owner or a project manager who is growing and now experiencing that you have more jobs, how can you really maintain visibility when you can't be in not only 2 places at once, but suddenly 10 places at once or 20 places at once? So we'll look at some of the tools that we have available to give you more visibility and insight into what's going on with your projects, and ways that your team can also communicate that to you, just using the platform here that we have. And then our last session, so 2 weeks from today, we're going to focus on tools that would empower a growing team to execute at a high level. I think one of the most common questions that I hear from people who are experiencing growth is that it's hard to recruit and find people to even bring onto your company. So that's a challenge that you're working on. Sometimes just full time, bringing new people on. We, have a lot of things in place that would help with that process. We have a lot of things in place that will empower your team, whether it be people that have been with you for a few years, and especially those new people that you're bringing on, empowering them to really execute at a high level. How can they do that well? How can they maintain the standards that you've really built your business on? How can you make sure that they know what those things are and that they have the right tools in place? So we'll be covering that for the next couple of weeks, and definitely hope that you guys can join us. That cash flow report is going to be located in a schedule, so you would pull up your schedule, go ahead to your reporting tab, and then you have cash flow right here. Again, for anybody that's curious about that, I'll send over some more information after today's session, but I think we're timing it perfect, hitting just the top of the hour here, so we'll go ahead and wrap up for you guys. Again, I'm Holly Gibson. If you have anything you want to follow up with me about, feel free to reach out to me directly by calling our office here, or of course, I'm sure Jordan, you'd love to hear from them as well.
Absolutely. You guys can reach us. Of course, it's the number that you've probably seen often at this point, but if you haven't, our number is 1-800-700-8321, and we're definitely looking forward to hearing from you soon. Otherwise, have a great evening, and if we don't hear from you, have a great weekend.
All right. Yeah, thank you.